All right, so every year, the national budget comes out, and it feels like this wall of numbers, right? But what if we looked at it differently? What if it's actually more like a roadmap to where the country's headed? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to dig into Budget 2026 and find the big bets, the bold moves, and yeah, the crucial reality checks that are going to shape our future. Yeah, this quote right here, it just nails it. Look, this is so much more than just, balancing the books for the next year. It's a strategic blueprint. The government is laying the groundwork for what comes next. So let's jump in and see where they're actually putting their biggest bets. Okay, so first up, let's talk about the big bets, the real headline grabbers. This is where you can see the ambition, the focus on these huge, long-term investments that are designed to have a massive impact. Okay, get ready for this number. It's huge. 12.2 lakh crore rupees. That is the government's capital expenditure, what they call capex. Basically, you can think of it as this gigantic investment in building out the country's future. We're talking roads, railways, the whole shebang. The idea behind it is pretty simple. When you build things, you create jobs and you fuel the economy for years to come. So where's all that cash going? Well, a massive chunk of it is being poured into a complete infrastructure overhaul. We're talking 7 new high-speed rail corridors, dedicated freight lines to get goods moving way more efficiently, plus major upgrades for ports and roads. And look, this is about more than just getting from point A to point B faster. It's a really strategic play to bring down the cost of doing business and, well, to really supercharge our trade. All right, next big bet, and this one's a game changer. Turning India into a powerhouse for global manufacturing. The whole idea here is to move up the value chain. So instead of just assembling parts, we're talking about designing and building cutting-edge products right here. And to make that happen, the government is putting some serious money on the table. 40,000 crore rupees for the India semiconductor mission. Computer chips. They're the brains inside literally everything these days, from your phone to your car. This is a huge push to build our own supply chain for these things, so we're not so reliant on other countries for such a critical piece of tech. And it's not just about chips. There's another huge push into a really key area, biotechnology. The Biopharma Shakti initiative is getting 10,000 crores to position India as a world leader in things like advanced medicines and vaccines. It's a major play for the future of healthcare. Okay, the last big bet we're going to talk about is all about making things simpler and offering some pretty smart incentives. So there's a brand new income tax act on the way. And the big promise is that it'll make filing your taxes less of a headache for everyone. And check this out. There's a huge tax holiday for foreign companies that come and build data centers here. That's a super clear signal that we want to attract major investment in our digital infrastructure. So when you put it all together, high-speed trains, homegrown chips, simpler taxes, it sounds pretty incredible, right? But, and there's always a but, every big plan has trade-offs. So what are the reality checks here? And that, of course, brings us to our reality checks. This is where we have to look at what the budget doesn't do, or at least can't do right away. It's the other, more, practical side of the story. All right, let's get right to the one thing everyone wants to know about: income tax. A lot of people, especially the middle class, were really hoping for a big tax cut. The reality? Well, for most of us, we're going to be paying about the same amount in taxes this year as we did last year. The tech slabs haven't really changed. So what about jobs? I mean, all this investment in infrastructure and manufacturing is definitely aimed at creating jobs. But, and this is important, it's not going to happen overnight. These are long-haul projects. Real, significant job growth is going to take time. And it also really depends on private companies jumping in with their own investments. See, you might be asking, well, why not just slash taxes for everyone and spend a ton more money? It really comes down to this term, fiscal consolidation. In simple terms, it just means the government is being really careful about how much money it borrows. They're trying to keep the country's debt in check. It's a disciplined, stable approach, but it also means there's just not much room for those big, flashy giveaways. So how did the stock market react to all this? Well, it was kind of lukewarm, to be honest. Investors could see the long-term vision for sure, but I think they were hoping for something more immediate to get excited about. And then a hike in the tax on futures trading didn't exactly help things. It kind of sent a signal that this budget wasn't really designed to create a short-term buzz in the market. Okay, so we've seen the big ambitious bets and the tough reality checks. But what's the actual philosophy driving all these decisions? What's the why behind it all?
And honestly, this quote from the finance minister really says it all. The message is loud and clear. This isn't about populism, it's about productivity, pragmatism, and progress. It's a deliberate choice to focus on the long-term fundamentals instead of short-term wins.
This strategy is really built around these three kartavyas, or duties. First, accelerate and sustain economic growth. Second, fulfill the aspirations of every Indian. And third, support the poor and the underprivileged. It's a framework that's trying to tie the big picture economic growth directly to the well-being of every single person. And you have to understand all of this ties into a much, much bigger picture, the vision for Viksit Bharat 2047. So the moves being made in this budget aren't just for this year. They're seen as foundational steps in a plan that stretches all the way out to 2047. Okay, we've gone through the grand vision, the real-world limits, and the philosophy behind it. So let's bring it all home and answer the most important question of all. What does this actually mean for you? Let's break it down sector by sector. For the tech and manufacturing sectors, this is a huge push forward, really setting India up for the future. For all of us, the big infrastructure spend means better connectivity down the road. But for the everyday taxpayer, the biggest change right now is simpler rules, not necessarily more money in your pocket. At the end of the day, it's a budget that's clearly playing the long game. Vision over immediate relief. And this cricket analogy is just perfect. Think of it like a coach who's focused on getting the team's fitness and fundamental skills right before worrying about the scoreboard. The philosophy is crystal clear. Build a strong, fundamentally sound economy first, and the big wins, the rapid growth, will come naturally. This is a marathon, not a sprint.